movements, one more fatal flaw, was the ideological bandwidth that they addressed. Most social movements operated on one issue. Someone was against a dam, someone is against some forest acquisition, someone wants greater remunerative prices for agriculture, someone wants a bill for agricultural labor, and so on. And the trouble is that while this gives you a good agitation, one issue can give you, a solid issue can give you a very good agitation, it never gets you a broad support, because people expect you to be able to give an alternate agenda for governance in general. They do not want you, just one issue, however good the issue may be, however appealing the issue may be, you need to address a larger bandwidth. And I also saw something else. In most of these social movements, because they were focusing on one particular aspect, someone was focusing only on, let us say, remunerative price for agriculture. Because you're focusing only on one aspect, they keep escalating their stakes in that particular issue. So much so that they forget that there is rest of society. Escalating remunerative prices for farmers means higher price of food grains for the poor of the country. These two things are linked. Most farmer movements forgot that link. They went ahead with it. And I saw most of the movements, social movements, were becoming ideologically purer and purer. So much pure that after some time they found that they were just one person left there. Because you were more pure than the next person. If there were three of us, two of us then had to be impure. So this is actually what has happened to so many movements. Therefore we said, okay, we have to address corruption alone does not give us ideology. Anti-corruption does not give us ideology. Anti-corruption is important, but we have several pillars there. We have anti-corruption, we have Swaraj, we have our kind of patriotism, which is not a linguist nationalism. And we have Aam Aadmi, which is to say, not the Aam. I keep saying Aam Aadmi is not Aam Mard. Aam Aadmi, Aam Aurat, Antim Insan. For us, Aam Aadmi, the metaphor of Aam Aadmi, is the last person in the queue, the very last person that we have seen. So these four things gave us our ideological bearings. And we said, no, we have to have a broader position on everything, from foreign policy to agriculture to Lokpal to everything. This is what we are evolving. As a result, what would happen is that in any one of these dimensions, you would not find it to be absolutely pure. Because purism in any dimension would be tempered by other demands, which is what politics is. In politics, you need to think not just about one aspect, but about everything put together. This is what the policy committees are doing. We have, as I mentioned, about 40 committees, but actually there is a clear structure to that. There is a small policy group set up, policy committee set up by the National Executive, which is Prashant ji, Anand Kumar ji and me. We have set up 5 subject committees. One on economy and ecology, one on political reforms, political and governance reform, third on the social issues, social and community issues. Then there is external affairs, and reservation is part of the social issues and so on. This issue is part of all that. So we have 5 committees. I'm sorry, I'm just forgetting one, but I'll just come back to you. The 5th is Swaraj in ideas, culture, knowledge, ideas, and so on. So we have 5 committees. Within each committees, we have policy groups. So like in economy and ecology, there are about 10 or 11 policy groups. Someone to deal with only industry, someone dealing with business practices, one on macroeconomic policies, something on black money, and so on and so forth. On political reforms, we have one on judicial reform, one on administrative reforms, one on electoral reforms, one on decentralization, and so on and so forth. On social issues, we have something on education, on health, on social justice, reservations, and so on. Within some of these policy groups, we have what we call task forces, which are meant to provide one stroke solution for one specific thing. What should be our policy on land acquisition? So we have a task force for that. Who are the people participating in it? It's a mix of things. In every committee, we have tried to have someone from the party, so that someone who has a political perspective, someone who would go and say, please look at these things in totality, not in isolation. We have people coming from social movements, because one of the real energy of the country in the last 30 years or so has been lots of what are called new social movements in the country. So we have representatives from these new social movements. We also have, in most cases, retired bureaucrats, people who have been in the civil service, who have actual experience of delivering these things. And we have academic experts. So we've tried to bring a combination of these.
It's never perfect, and very often persons you want to be there are not available. All kinds of things happen. And still that legacy of people not wanting to associate with political parties persists. So sometimes you can get the very best person, but he would say, sorry, but I don't want to officially be in. I'll give you all the inputs, but I can't. I won't. Sorry, am I touching something? Okay.
So we have lots of people. So there would be, in other words, there would be lots of inputs of people whose names do not figure on the list. But some of the best minds of the country have agreed to give their inputs in a private capacity, which is to say, we would not officially acknowledge their names, but we know that they have contributed, they have made inputs to these things. That's the policy part of it. So we hope really that we would come up with a document which would be, what we are calling a new agenda for India. In the early 1980s, lots of intellectuals of the country came together and they issued a document called Agenda for India. This was Kuldeep Nayyar and lots of others who came together. So we want to have a new edition of that and present basically an agenda for the country, whether it's about solar energy or natural resources or macroeconomic policy or taxation. We want to suggest a broad range of where do we stand. I was speaking of the problems of parties. The third problem of social movements has been their inability to think of a cross-sectional mobilization, which is linked to the point that I just made. Most social movements thought that they should cater to the most disadvantaged. So you would have a social movement that speaks to of the Adivasis,
of Dalits. This time I've certainly not pushed the button. So they would focus on Adivasis, on Dalits. Once again, the lesson we learned was that no matter how deprived the one group is, politics requires you to speak about all the groups. Maybe you can say, I don't want to speak about those who have 28-floor houses. Keep them out. So that 1% can go out. We don't need to articulate that. But apart from that, we really, and that's the difference, we don't see our movement as a movement which consciously targets one section of society and not another. We really deliberately want to target cross sections of Indians. We do believe that software engineers in Bangalore and that Adivasi women in Jharkhand have some common interest, have something to share, or can be persuaded to have things in common. And this is of course very much against the older wisdom of politics, where you were to do politics of confrontation of this class versus that class, etc. I think the experience of social movements teaches us that, especially for politics, in order to have viable politics, we have to do politics of every single section of society. And we have to speak much larger concerns.
So, because you work with because you're talking about the social movements or social causes, right? Do you guys have internal disagreements? Like, it was unfortunate that we saw Anna Hazare and Kiran Bedi left because they want to go to a political. The similar way, because this organization, you all came together that you want to go to political. We do not want to see that, it gets disintegrated, because you're talking of the difference of, so the question is, are you seeing anything it's going to happen, or what is that we are trying to do to prevent that?
To me, differences are natural. if 5 people are sitting together and if they do not have any difference at all, I would start suspecting that only one of them is thinking.
Very good.
If there are alive and thinking people, differences are bound to take place, especially because we have not come from any one ideological school. We have come together on one issue, came from very diverse backgrounds. And therefore, the question should not be, do we have differences? Of course we have differences. Are we awkward or embarrassed about it? At least I'm not. As you can see, I'm not at all embarrassed about the fact that we have differences on many questions. That only is a tribute to the fact that we think that we have brought our thinking with us. The question is, do we have some mechanisms for resolution of those differences? And to keep the conflict of opinions within a certain range on crucial moments, so that someone doesn't walk out. I mean, that came up when Prashantji spoke about Kashmir, for example. There were clear differences which came out in open. I do not see why I should feel awkward about the fact that there were those differences. The real question in political organization is, do you have rules about, have you been able to work out ways in which those differences do not erupt in ways which are detrimental to the organization's interest? That's what we are working towards, and we really hope that this document, although this new document that would come, would not resolve all the differences. People will continue to interpret it differently. In Telangana, in Andhra Pradesh, we face very serious differences right now because our colleagues because the whole state is divided on that question, and so is our party. I mean, it would be very artificial if our party did not have any of these tensions. If the whole state of Andhra Pradesh